to order our public session. You ready to stream?
Yeah.
So I'd like to recognize a land acknowledgement. They're gonna play it now.
We acknowledge that York Region is located on the traditional territory of many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and Métis peoples, and the treaty territories of the Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and Williams Treaties First Nations. Today, this area is home to many diverse Indigenous peoples, and we recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation as our closest First Nation community. Miigwech.
Thank you. Disclosure of interest by any member? If not, I'll ask Member Purchell and Member Cartalucci for confirmation of the public minutes of October 28th board meeting. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Most carry. We have two presentations. Chief, you'll introduce the first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to all board members, and through you, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over shortly to folks who I know are not new to the board, but Superintendent Ahmed Saleh of Executive Services and our Director of Strategic Services, Steve Pinto, are going to take you through a presentation that also relates to 8.9, the board report, the Crime Severity Index for 2024. And they've done a really fantastic job in this presentation of explaining the report in more detail, and we will collectively answer any questions at the conclusion of the presentation that you might have. So, gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you, Chief. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Ahmed Saleh, Superintendent with Executive Services. Joined here this morning by Steve Pinto, Director of Strategic Services. And as the Chief indicated, we're going to be going over the Crime Severity Index report for 2024. We're going to be providing you an explanation of what the CSI is. And the CSI, in a nutshell, was something that was developed in 2009 by the federal government. And it's a tool that measures not just the amount of crime, but the seriousness of the crime in the community. So we'll be explaining that. We'll be going over York's Crime Severity Index, our national and GTA comparators, and some reporting and community trust.
Thank you, sir. We'd like to start with a general explanation of the Crime Severity Index and why this report comes to the community and the Police Services Board each year. Police services record each criminal incident in their records management system, and this information includes standardized details about the crime, ensuring consistency across the country. The data is extracted from these systems and then sent to Statistics Canada. In late summer, Statistics Canada releases reports based on municipalities' crime severity. Strategic Planning Unit works on analysis of this report and to provide to the executive leadership team, the Police Services Board, and the community to help provide clarity and comparison to our spring numbers, as well as to help with planning on future programs. So what is crime severity? Each violation is assigned a crime severity weight. So based on the average length of incarceration and the rate of incarceration for that offense, and calculated using court sentence data. More serious offenses are assigned higher rates than less serious ones. The Crime Severity Index then combines violent crimes such as homicides, assaults, and robberies with non-violent crimes like fraud and theft. These are the actual formulas used to come up with the CSI, the Crime Severity Index. So just a further explanation. It's important to note that there is a difference between conventional crime rate and the Crime Severity Index. The conventional crime rate measures the total number of crimes relative to population, and it is reported. We bring that report to the board in the spring. This is a useful measure of crime volume over time. However, the Crime Severity Index assesses volume and severity in a specific area. And you can see by this graphic that, for example, one murder has about 280 times the impact that a property theft has. The Crime Severity Index focuses on the severity of crimes rather than just the number of offenses. More serious crimes like homicide or violent assaults have a much greater impact on the Crime Severity Index than less serious crimes like theft or shoplifting. Also to note, conventional crime statistics that we report in spring exclude traffic incidents, while the Crime Severity Index includes those incidents. Now that we've covered, in general, the Crime Severity Index, we'll now focus on York Region. It's important to remember that these statistics come from Statistics Canada and include all law enforcement in York, not just York Regional Police. So this can include activities by the RCMP, the Ontario Provincial Police, and partner agencies where they may take the lead on an investigation that took place here in York Region. So as indicated in the report, we're including a 10-year trend to help show the major impact that COVID years had and where you can see that dip. Looking at the trend from 2015, you can draw the line showing a more gradual change without that major interruption. This change is more reflective of the increase in population and associated increase in the need for police response. Looking at this donut chart in the corner, out of all the incidents in the year, less than a quarter are classified as violent. Overall incidences fell in 2024, and motor vehicle theft dropped due to focused enforcement and better security, yet shoplifting and some frauds have increased. I'll pass it on now to Superintendent Salia to speak to trends and top contributors to our violent CSI.
Thanks, Steve. As mentioned by Steve, the violent CSI index went up by 3.8%. So what we wanted to do this year, maybe different than other years, is explain to the board and the community the why. Why did we go up by 3.8%? So we wanted to identify the top contributors to the spike. And what you see on the screen, homicide, attempt murders, forcible confinements, kidnappings, and sexual violence against children are the primary contributors. We also identified two key insights that we want to share. One of the key insights that Steve already kind of touched on is that violent crime incidents are actually down by 3.7%. So the number of violent offenses in the region down 3.7%, but the crime severity index went up by 3.8%. And what does that mean? It means that the increase is attributable to the type of crime, which carries more of a weighted score, which is the ones that you're seeing on the screen there. Another key insight that we want to share is that we've learned that one of the driving factors for all of the things that you see in the screen above is related to violence that is domestic in nature. Intimate partner violence is linked to some of our most serious offenses. Even a small rise in IPV produces a large spike in the CSI. And I'm going to give you a little bit more of a breakdown as to what that means. So in terms of homicides, as you see, we're up 83.3% from 2023 to 2024. The breakdown as it relates to IPV and family violence is 45% is attributed to family violence, specifically 28% to intimate partner violence and 17% to family violence. Now, when you hear me say family violence, different from intimate partner violence, is sibling on sibling or maybe child on parent. 55% of the homicides we believe are attributed to the criminal underworld. As it relates to the attempt murders that you see, 42, up 31.3%. We can tell you that 29% of those are attributed to violence that is domestic in nature. That breakdown is about 14.5% for IPV and 14.5% for family violence. An additional, the 33% also attributed to the criminal underworld, and about 38% of those are attributed to other incidents such as road rage or fights that escalated. The forcible confinement numbers are also staggering, 63.8%. And I think one of the things that really stood out here is that 85% of them are attributed to family violence, 73% intimate partner violence, 12% family violence. The additional 16% we believe are related to the criminal underworld. Kidnapping, we're seeing that actually 21% are attributed to family violence and 79% attributed to the criminal underworld. And the fifth category there, which is obviously going to strike a chord with everyone in this room, these are our most precious commodities in the community, is sexual violence against children, up 20%. And when we did a deep dive in this, we uncovered some really key insights here. And I'll tell you that this category here includes 8 different criminal offenses. So contained within those 8 criminal offenses are 3 that that really stand out. 30% are attributed to cybercrime related offenses. That includes luring a child by a computer. It also includes making sexual explicit material available to children. What does that mean? It means showing, sharing, sending, and providing sexually explicit images to our children. The additional 70%, the balance of the 70% there, I should say, is attributed to an offense called sexual interference. Sexual interference in the criminal code involves any sexual touching of a child under the age of 16, either physically or by using an object. The criminal code and the laws in this country do not recognize any form of consent for a child under the age of 16. Another alarming number that we got from this specific category is that 60% of the occurrences happen in a shared residence with the accused and the victim. We're seeing sexual offenses against minors because the offenders are increasingly on digital platforms. So are our kids. They're on iPads, they're on cell phones, which makes our role in law enforcement and as an organization something that we're doing repeatedly. Crime prevention, education, strong collaboration with other agencies are absolutely essential to building resiliency. And we talk about shared responsibilities. I know the chief talks about shared responsibilities all the time. It's incumbent on us as parents, not just as law enforcement officers, but in the community to make sure that we monitor our kids' activity on social media. The next couple of slides are actually going to demonstrate a lot of the good news that's coming out of the report. Even though we went up in crime severity for violence, we did go down 43.6% in extortions, 16% in robberies, 15% in home invasions. As it relates to the non-violent crimes, we're down 33% in motor vehicle thefts, 16% in theft unders, and 1.2% in break-and enters. These numbers really do demonstrate our targeted policing strategies, our partnerships, our community engagement, our crime prevention. It's all working. A number of the data-led initiatives that we led in 2024 as an organization, as it relates to auto theft specifically, Project BOA, Project Viper, Operation AutoGuard 2.0, some of the break and enter initiatives that were incredibly successful, Project StrikePlate, Project Dusk, and retail theft initiatives such as Project Spartan and Project Steel and Spirits. All of these initiatives are a true testament to our officers who are sacrificing and working day in and day out to ensure that our community is safe and feels safe. And we're going to touch on very quickly our national and provincial comparators across the country here. An overview here nationally, Canada is down 4.1% in crime severity. This includes violent and non-violent crimes. This is in the year 2024, obviously. Ontario as a whole, down 1.4%. The GTA actually up slightly 2%, and York as a whole is down 1.2%.
The crime statistics measures of York Region are compared to 8 selected national police services and 8 selected provincial police services that serve the largest and most similarly sized populations. The 8 largest national comparator police services that serve a population of more than 700,000 are listed on this slide, which shows the comparators for both 2023 and 2024. Among our national comparators in 2024, York Region's rankings improved from 3rd to 2nd for total CSI. And in your report, you will see we also do a provincial comparator that includes 4 additional provincial police services that serve a population of 500,000 or more. Amongst our provincial comparators in 2024, York Region rankings improved from 5th to 3rd for total CSI. In your packages, you'll see many charts showing data with our comparators, and this specific chart puts our GTA comparators together. This 10-year trend shows that mostly York is in step with Canada and Ontario, but does highlight a steeper curve for a few years after COVID. Some reasons that could be attributed to this changing shape of York Region's population, including, for example, population size, our density, and reporting practices of our victims and complainants. For the 10-year violent CSI comparison, in 2024, York Region's violent crime CSI did increase by 3.8%, as already mentioned. And while York Region remains below the provincial and national and GTA average, the gap does appear to be narrowing. And some of the drivers of violent crime in recent years in York Region have been robbery, weapons violations, breaking and entering, cybercrime, and things that were already mentioned. And from the budget presentation that you've seen, we looked at what the data looks like as a rate of change over 10 years. And increasing resourcing and preventing and reducing violent crimes are some of the main pillars that we brought up in the budget presentation, which speaks to many of the indicators that you've seen throughout this presentation and also in your package.
And I'll just add, as it relates to population, the growth of city centers, rapid urbanization, densification, this is something that can be very difficult to measure, but it has to be considered when we're looking at the numbers. Population growth itself doesn't raise the CSI necessarily, but it creates the conditions where more serious offenses, more serious crime can occur, and it stretches our police resources. And we talk about population. I'll give you the last census numbers from 2016 to 2021. Just by comparison, Toronto grew in population by 2.3%. Peel grew in population by 5%. York Region grew in population more than twice that of Toronto at 5.7%. And in fact, after the last census was reported in 2021, the region came out and said those numbers are actually they're low by 3.4%. And why does that matter? If the population used to measure the CSI is low, the CSI will actually increase in numbers slightly. Realities are we're growing rapidly, we're urbanizing, we're densifying, and the unintended consequence of that is crime. I'll share one more quick stat with you. Crime really has no borders. And one of the interesting things that we were able to kind of reveal and uncover, and Steve touched on it with violent crime and robberies as it relates to that 10-year chart. When it comes to robberies, specifically the ones that impact the community and generate a lot of fear, carjacking, home invasions, retail theft robberies like the glass break we saw in Newmarket recently, last week, 82% of those offenders do not live in the region. Yep.
Sorry. York Region Police actively urges residents to report specific situations as soon as they're safe to do so. We provide frequent reminders in community meetings, school business outreach, and targeted social media posts, clarify which channel to use, and emphasize the timely reporting helps direct patrols, traffic enforcement, and prevention initiatives across York Region. This increased the trust in the community and increased the number of reports over the years. As you can see from the slide, we do many campaigning and encouraging our residents to report, especially on matters of domestic violence. And so that does attribute to an increase in reporting on those incidents.
And just to add to that really quickly, the impact of online reporting. So for instance, in 2018, we made online reporting of LCBO thefts online. That number went from 185 in 2018 to 992 in 2024. That's a 436% increase in the reports of LCBO thefts online. Also, sexual assaults. We introduced the ability for our victims to be able to report online sexual assaults in 2018. That number went from 21 to 67 in 2024, a 219% increase, it really does give the community and the victims an opportunity to report an intimate and private offense. If they're not comfortable coming into the police station, we've given them that ability to do it online. And really, that's the end of our presentation. We want to thank you for your time. We hope that this presentation was insightful. We understand as an organization that the Crime Severity Index really does allow us to focus our efforts on offenses that cause the most harm in the community. And I'll share with some more good news, actually. If you remember the slide earlier, we showed the top 5 contributing factors to the spike in violent crime. Very preliminary numbers that are yet to be validated, but everything is trending down. So for instance, homicide are trending down about 50%. Attempt murders, and this is sorry for the year of 2025, obviously. Homicides trending down over 50%. Attempt murders trending down over 20%. Forcible confinement trending down about 6%. Kidnapping trending down almost 30%. Sexual violations against children trending down over 27%. Again, very preliminary numbers, but it's important to highlight that the strategies are working, our partnerships are working, our crime prevention is working, the leadership from the chief and the ELT is working, and the support from this board is working. And just one really last quick tidbit, Dr. Bodenstein joined us a few weeks back to help give us a different lens on how we should be reporting out. And a lot of the changes in the visuals and some of the content is attributable to Dr. Bodenstein. So thank you, sir. And through you, Mr. Chair, if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. And it's nice that the board is really hands-on here. Before I open up, I just have one quick question and one statement. The GTA on slides 15 and 16, you don't have to bring it up, but you make a comment that it includes Toronto, Peel, and Durham. Does it also include York? But we make up the GTA and it would skew the number, I think, downward if it would. Okay. And the other thing is, and I know we're talking about severe crime here, but YRP has been making a concerted effort to get out to the communities. And I've been a mayor for enough years now that we do a ton of neighborhood watch type sessions. And the encouragement for people to report everything, even if a pair of sunglasses gets taken out of your car because you left it unlocked, report at yrp.ca. So it with all the more reports, the more data, the better we can hone in on things. But Member Taylor, you had your hand up.
Thanks very much. Great presentation. Glad to see the sort of the 10-year data there. And the first question I have actually is about, you really touched an interesting point, which is around intimate partner violence. And you gave some stats about what it was at, what it represented, but we don't have a trend line on that. So it might have always represented that level. And so I'll always go back. One of the statements I'll finish with, and be interested to see what others think, but I think most of the data you gave in the middle of the presentation was 1-year data. And I just think that 1-year data, positive or negative, because it can work against you too, is really not, it's interesting, but 10-year data or 5-year data, 10-year data is much more interesting, because you can have, especially with severe crime index, you just have a handful of murders more than you did in another year for some reason, and it just spikes in one direction or another. And so the reason I'm asking this though is to get at something more important, which is if intimate partner violence was representing a growing number of that trend over 10 years, and it's kind of bifurcating, and that's what's driving the number up, as opposed to that's just always a big part of it, then I think, that's something to really focus on, and not just in policing, but with our partner agencies. What more do we need to do to create safe houses, to create educational awareness for people who are in that situation, how to get out, how to get help? If that's happening and that's driving a lot of things, it's lovely to dissect the data. The question is, what do you do with it? And so I'd be curious about, was that data that you identified about intimate partner violence, was that the percentage that year? And was it the same the year before and the year before? Or is that actually what's causing, or one of the major causes of an increase over multiple years?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor Taylor. I do have some of those answers for you, actually. So we'll start with the domestic offenses. I can tell you that the 5-year trend for domestic offenses for anything to do with intimate partner violence over 5 years has gone up 11%. And that's a multitude of offenses. There's dozens of offenses that could be attributed to intimate partner violence. And out of that continuum of offenses, we're up 11% over 5 years. As it relates specifically to assault, because when I looked at the chart actually with our director, Greg Stanitsi from BI yesterday, when you look at the data, the assaults stand out above and beyond everything else. And then that 5-year trend as it relates to assaults for intimate partner violence, all forms of assault, assaults with a weapon, aggravated assault, cause bodily harm, in 5 years, we're up 9%.
Okay, but again, we're up 11 and 9% in 5 years. But what's the total of that category up in 5 years, and what are the other pieces of that category up in 5 years? Because it could actually mean that that's low compared to the other increases. Because the whole category is up in 5 years, is it not?
Correct.
So what's the whole category up in 5 years?
So the whole category is up 11%, and assaults.
Intimate partner violence.
Correct.
No, but intimate partner violence, as you described in the slides, were a subset of, I forgot the category there.
Family violence as a whole.
No, I think it was, okay, could you go back to that slide?
Sure.
Was this, yeah, it was all these slides, and there's parts of these that it represented a significant number. But if it's up 11% and all these categories are the categories that matter, homicide, maybe attempted murder, I don't know which ones you're talking about, forcible confinement. If they're up 15%, then it's not necessarily an area you put an overwhelming target on. I guess to get further into the data, we got to understand what that number means, I guess. So up
Sure.
11%, but here, this is only 1 year, so it's not that helpful, but.
I've got these numbers too, actually,
Okay,
so I'll
so
share
what's
with
the
you.
5 year, yeah.
So the 5-year trend for attempt murders, we're up 16.7%. The 5-year trend for homicides, we're up 144%. The 5-year trends, we've combined forcible confinement and kidnapping because they're typically oftentimes related, 41%. And the 5-year trend for sexual violence against children is up 80%.
Yeah, so I guess where I go back to is the intimate partner violence category you had was up 11%. That doesn't sound as meaningful when you hear those numbers. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out if it really is a standout or not, and if that is something you then focus on or not more. I mean, you focus on it, of course, it's important, but you put a greater focus on it or not. I guess dissecting this to understand, you guys aren't going to just go, well, that's up a lot. Let's focus on homicide. You got to figure out what piece of it, and so is it more gangs and guns, is it more family violence? And it sounds like family violence is up, but not as dramatically as some other categories, perhaps, according to what you just described.
Yeah, violence as it relates to the criminal underworld definitely is contributing factors to all of this, and there's just different aspects of that. But to your point, Mayor Taylor, we can do a deeper dive and share with you and the board in the coming weeks.
Okay, yeah. And then the other thing I guess I'd ask about is in the appendix 2, table 2.1, that's so CSI and national comparators. So again, this I would think would be a key data point for this, or a metric for this board. And I'm not trying to be difficult, but if you look at that, I could be wrong, but other than Winnipeg, maybe York has the greatest increase in numbers, and these aren't percentages. I don't think they're just a metric, but over the 10 years. And in some jurisdictions, Edmonton has a decrease. Montreal has stayed steady. And so, trying to understand that, especially in a 10-year horizon, I think I think the board would be, irresponsible we didn't ask about how some of the comparators are, what would your reasons be, or what would your thoughts be about why we're on a 10-year basis near the top? I know in other categories we're doing quite well, but in this one and that's what I talked about last time. The trend line is almost more important than the snapshot. So I'd just be curious what I'm sure you guys have discussions about this.
Which chart were you looking at, Mayor? Sorry.
It's the 10-year. So it's appendix 2, CSI and WCR and national comparators. Total CSI and national comparators 2.1. There's total CSI national comparators, and it's a 10-year horizon on all our comparators. And in that, you'll see that we go from 33 to 53.9. So we go up 20 points, if you want to call it that. Peel goes up 42 to 56. And then places like Edmonton goes down. Montreal stays even. Even Toronto goes from 56 to 68, about 14 points. So in that category, our trend line is challenging.
Yeah, and we recognize that. And, the population growth, the densification, the urbanization that we touched on during the presentation, Mayor Taylor, absolutely plays a part in this. And some of the other issues that we're seeing, like we touched on, is criminals from other jurisdictions that are coming into York that are committing offenses. One of the staggering numbers, again, that I shared earlier was 82% as it relates specifically to robberies are accused persons that don't live in the region. It's not the only answer, but it's a contributing factor.
So is that an area we want to get more data on? Is the sort of the organized crime element of these stats? Like, because if you break these down and then you take organized crime out, and otherwise we go up, modestly, like, comparative to the other 8, but in the organized crime, it's way up, and that's maybe because they're saying, look, let's move out of Toronto, Montreal, let's move into, Vaughan, let's move into wherever. If that's a big part of it, maybe understanding that data a little more would be interesting.
Yeah, we will circle back with you, Mayor Taylor, and we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive and try and answer some of those questions for you.
Can I just comment on this? I think the point you're making, though, about the opportunity here in York Region, it's a very affluent community. It's, from a criminalist perspective, target rich. And that's what we're seeing across the board here, is that when you talk about 80% of the people that we're arresting, whether it's repeated or not, coming from outside of York Region, that's a different number than it may have been, many years ago. We didn't see that type of thing. We've had violence prevention strategies in the past across the border. As Ahmed said, there are no borders, but we, through our BI dashboards and a very focused effort with our front line, had tried to do some work around the GTA, around that Steeles Avenue border in the past, and had some success with that. But this is the reason for a regional crime strategy that just got implemented within the last year, was to actually do exactly what you're talking about here, is connect our frontline activities with our investigative activities and make sure everybody is working from on the same priorities, right? Across the districts and tied into our investigative units, because we know that's going to have an impact and drive those numbers down. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on some of the announcements that have been recently made that I and we collectively are quite happy about. The recent one around cash bail. I don't even want to talk about bail anymore because we've beaten that one to death, but I will say, I think federally and provincially, what we're seeing happen with these bills that are being introduced, as they become law and as that plays out, we're going to see a very different picture across the GTA, probably across the country. And we'll continue to work towards using those tools available to us as they become available to us to continue to drive those numbers down. That's where I think the focus needs to be. I just wanted to go back to your intimate partner violence piece. Just
before you do, can I say one last thing on that? So what I think, I know that you're all doing this in the background. What I would love to see us do next is, so that we're getting really, really rich data. We've got some ideas for more data. I'm sure we'll get more, but then help us link it to, here's what the data trends are saying over 5 or 10 years. And here's what our strategic priorities are, because the data is telling it.
Right.
And I
like, what are we doing about it?
But not fully.
Yeah, I get it.
Something that says, a report maybe at some point that says, so here's what the data is telling us. Here's the trends you observed. Here's from what we, from the previous report. And here's what actions are being taken and why we believe we're making progress on what the data is telling us.
Sure. And I think Ahmed was touching on that a little bit when he hit on some of those projects that all related to driving the, as an example, the auto theft number down, right? So sort of more of that would be helpful for the board. That's not a problem, because that's the whole objective here, is to remain completely strategic and aligned with what the data is telling us, to make sure we're focusing our efforts where they need to be.
And don't get me wrong, we hear about the projects and the specific actions, and then we hear about the data. It's just specifically saying, so these are the 3 pieces of data that tell us we need to do this, and these are the 3 projects that link to this data. These are the ones that link to this data, right? So
got it.
Really gets together.
Okay, great.
Sorry, and you're going to say.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say about intimate partner violence. I think what's interesting about some of those categories you talked about, and I know Ahmed touched on it a bit, is that some of those categories from time to time relate to intimate partner violence, and sometimes they don't. But assault, as an example, and I know Amit was touching on this, when we say, and it's up 11% across the board, there are a number of different offenses within that are captured in intimate partner violence. But the most prolific one that we see for the most part is the general assault category. And those numbers are up, and those numbers are significant. So as much as the percentage may not sound significant, the number itself is, and that's why this epidemic around intimate partner violence is needed to continue to be a focus. So I just wanted to make that comment. Yeah, so thank you.
Member Purcell.
Three quick questions. First one, can the data be broken down in York Region by urban versus rural areas?
So CSI does not. So this is stats from Statistics Canada. It does not break down by our municipalities. It's
Okay.
just the region as a whole. But in April, we'll be submitting our spring report, which will be the final 2025 numbers. We will break that information down. So we have a greater opportunity to work with our statistics
Yes,
in the spring.
and that's important
Yes.
for distribution and targeting. Second question is, in view of the crimes related to young people in particular, is there, as part of the operations of YRP right now, a concerted information campaign about the social media threat that's posed to children?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have Deputy McCloskey speak to this prevention work that's going on with kids.
Thank you, Chief. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for your question, Mr. Purcell. Yes, the short answer is yes. The human trafficking section of York Regional Police, along with our youth engagement officers, combine to provide education within high schools that is part of the Education Act and tied to curriculum. So this year alone, I can tell you that year to date, anyways, nearly 3,400 students between the ages of, or the grades of grade 9 and grade 12 receive education related to human trafficking, internet safety, luring, self-exploitation, and the threats around sexting and texting and other forms of online luring. This program was developed by our ICE officers, and it's delivered by human trafficking and youth engagement officers throughout the year, across 9 different schools within the Catholic Board. The public school board provides a similar curriculum, but they've elected to do it through other educators outside of policing.
I'm aware of that program, and I think that's very successful, but the real weakness here is the parents, not the students. There's a whole lot of parents that will say, I didn't know my kid was doing this. I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know. And I think to the extent that an information campaign can be targeted against parents to sensitize them to the kinds of attacks that are being directed at children, that might be part of, again, general information operations that could be useful. It's the lack of awareness by parents that really leads to the issues themselves.
Okay, I appreciate that comment. I'll take that back, and we'll address that through our community services section. Thank you.
A third question. So the CSI index is really interesting to me because I'm not sure how they come up with the weightings. Just as a question by way of follow-up, is there an ASI thought given? And this is the arrest severity index. There's a big difference between arresting an 18-year-old and arresting a crime boss. Just a question, and I leave that with you. Thank you.
Do you want to comment or?
I'm not aware of one, but there could be. And we can certainly look, again, this is run by Statistics Canada, but we can certainly look at your region example.
The issue here, and again, underlined, is the increasing activity of organized crime. And that happens at all levels, including pushing out these young kids to do the smash and grabs and all the rest of that follows way up a chain. Well, if there, again, the logic of the CSI, I sort of understand, though I'm curious again about how you construct the values. But the real issue here is who is being taken down, because that ultimately affects crime, because the generator of crime is the drug lord as opposed to the guy that's pushing pot on the street corner.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's opportunities to potentially build a dashboard through our BI unit. So I'll sit down with our director, Greg Sinitsi, and look for opportunities of how we can measure that through a dashboard.
Thank you.
The analogy of cut the head off the snake. Member Cartelucci.
I heard quite a bit about violence between partners, and I'm very confused. Is it because we don't describe partners anymore properly, or we have maybe 10 different categories of partners? What is really going on? Do we have to think beyond the criminality that we see, or we have to think how we behave as human beings, as people? Because I see here the partnership today, I can't count anymore how many different type of partners, or even with children, what they identify now, children. They're no longer children, they identify a million different ways of identifying. Is it this why this criminality is happening more? Is it because there's no rules, there's no more any guidance by parents and by the human race? This is what I see here, a lot of that. Just my feelings.
Not sure if you want to talk to some of it is the changing demographics too within our communities.
As it relates to the question through Mr. Cartelucci, Mr. Chair?
Well, the violence among partners.
Oh, violence amongst intimate partner violence, by definition, is any two individuals who are in an intimate relationship, and I think that's the best way I can describe it. It doesn't necessarily matter what the gender is. If there's two people who are in an intimate relationship together, that is the data that we're collecting.
Excellent. Member Bodenstein.
Yep. Thank you, and through the chair, and yep, and as Superintendent Salia mentioned, I sat down with Steve and himself and the others to talk about it. So thank you for that opportunity. It's a real privilege. But as we've talked a lot about the CSI, I just also wanted to ask a couple questions about the clearance rate. And you mentioned that there was a decrease in our overall clearance, but if we look at Appendix 7, 7.1, 8.1 and 8.3, we are seeing, and I think 7.1 highlights it best, where the clearance rate is staying pretty steady between 6 to 9%, but we're at about double the overall incidence. So we're actually, our officers are actually doing a really good job at clearing these with probably similar resources. And I think that's something that maybe hasn't been touched on in the report. And I think it is important to commend our officers that they are doing a good job in dealing with a changing circumstance. And I would say one way I would just adjust this figure and the other figures just to sort of be able to highlight the good news too, is make this as a stacked bar plot where you have the total, but then you also have a colored region underneath, say like red or something, that is you're cleared, and you would actually see that going up. And because I think it's important to highlight where we are doing good as well. I think that's, as a member Taylor also mentioned too. So, but I want to say also good job to you all in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for that and for highlighting that, and absolutely something that we can explore for next year's report to do it that way. And I know the chief might have a few comments about clearance rates.
Yeah, well, first off, great pick from the report. We've talked about this for a while. We are doing a lot of work right now on the clearance rates, how things are coded, all of that. So we're likely going to stand up a project in 26 to amalgamate some of our statistics into one location and to do a deeper dive into all of the clearances, how they're cleared, and a lot of the work that's already going on, the good work that's going on, the great work by our officers, because they are working really hard to clear these. I know Deputy De Silva with the districts, which is where a big bulk of the staff are, as you can imagine, in our CIB offices and frontline, has had a real push on with the staff sergeants, inspectors, and superintendents to really focus in this area, as well as our staff superintendent, Jen McHugh, I think is behind me here, Jen. There's a lot of work going on around that. So I'm really excited about us doing this deeper dive in 26 to really focus on this to make sure, because when you compare, and you have to compare, because how do you know what your baseline is against other agencies or the GTA or whatever? We want to know that we're doing it the right way and that we're capturing the right information. And I can tell you, in some instances, we likely are not, where it could have been cleared a certain way, it may have been clear there, and that's just education. And some of that's attributed to, we have a very young organization, and a very young organization at rank now as well. Like we have staff sergeants that have not had to do some of that work before they now land in a position and need some further education on how clearances should be done. So that will be part of this project as well, to make sure everybody is singing from the same song sheet. The stats are captured one way, not two ways, and that we'll be able to come back with it. And I suspect we're going to see those numbers increase substantially as far as clearances go once this project gets up and running and we start to see some of that work pay off. So, but great pick out of the report for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So with that, I'll ask Member Bodenstein to move the receipt of the presentation and bring forward item 8.9, which was the report, seconded by Member Faisal. All in favor? That carries. Next presentation. Chief McCloskey, Deputy Chief, you'll introduce this one?
Actually, I think it's going to be Superintendent Salia to introduce it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Morning. I'll introduce you real quickly, Niraj. Niraj Bhargava is going to be providing a presentation on artificial intelligence and his role with YRP over the last year and where we're going as an organization. Niraj is the founder and CEO of a company called New Energy. He's worked very closely with us. He's worked very closely with Greg Sinitsy from Business Intelligence, who chairs our AI governance committee. And it's through Niraj's insight and leadership and really his ability to train our governance committee. We're at a position where we're going to be very close to launching an artificial intelligence procedure that the chief will touch on very briefly after Niraj's presentation. So I'll pass it over to Niraj. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Mr. Chair, Chief McSween, members of the board, thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and it's a delight to be working with you all. I'll start by just saying something that I think you're all aware of, but AI is a transformational tool, and it has significant implications to all parts of our community and absolutely to your important jobs in law enforcement. So I'm here to speak about AI and AI governance and our work we're doing together with YRP. But I do appreciate actually coming second in the presentations this morning, because I think the context of the previous presentation really is relevant to how AI should be considered within the context of your important mandate. You know, crime severity, such a huge mandate you all have on addressing this, but at the same time, making sure we build public trust. And when we talk about a transformational tool like artificial intelligence, it's affecting all parts of what we're doing, whether it's criminal activity or law enforcement or our community and the crimes that were talked about earlier. So with that, thank you, Chief McSween, for your leadership on this topic, because in our previous conversations, you mentioned right away, public consultation is so important to YRP on this topic of AI, collaboration, but leadership as well. So with that, yes, I'm Neeraj Bhargava, representing a company, New Energy AI, headquartered in Ottawa. I'm here with Richard Barber, but our team is governance and AI experts, but we have had a focus on law enforcement. Hopefully my mouse will work. My opening message, though, is that while there's lots of fears and risks of AI, AI can be trusted. However, there's a very important however to that, and we have to have the right guardrails. So AI is a tool that's in all parts of our society and absolutely could be a huge part of the focused requirements when we look at the data of where there's criminal activity, where we want to address things more effectively, and it is a tool that we may apply in certain ways. But again, guardrails are a critical ingredient. But 7 years ago, when we formed New Energy AI and focused on law enforcement and public on use of AI and guardrails at New Energy AI, we learned at that time that the risks were really significant and concerning. But today, things have changed a lot, and I think people are aware that now the biggest risk of AI is waiting to engage with the technology. There's a competitive world. There's a world around us going on, and we'll be left behind if we don't embrace the technology in the right places in the right areas. So I know as a board member myself, and the responsibility of boards includes risks. There are risks with AIs, but I would encourage your risk register to include, using AI in a way that keeps up with the needs as we watch the world around us. So New Energy AI, just a quick introduction. We are a Canadian sovereign company, Ottawa headquartered, working with the federal government of Canada. 2018, people were wondering, AI governance, is this really an important topic? Certainly things have changed a lot in the last few years. And so we are leaders in AI governance that have focused on law enforcement, but we also have been working with the government of Canada and have been graduated out of a testing program. We have a software platform as well as AI governance solutions for organizations and have been tested by the RCMP, by other parts of the federal government, and have been approved for full deployment on AI governance in the government of Canada. We have a platform, framework, standards, looking globally on these topics of guardrails for AI and trust measurement techniques. That earlier presentation was helpful for me to see the context of how important data is, metrics are, measurements, and so with AI as well, we need to measure it to manage it. You'll hear me say that again later in this presentation. But how do we do that? We co-create the appropriate guardrails with our client organizations, and we're delighted to have worked with Greg and Superintendent Salia and the team here, the governance committee, on education and building policies that make sense for YRP and frameworks. So that's what our business is all about. And we are also independent third-party reviewers, because a prime minister of the UK last year said, AI firms cannot mark their own homework. So if you're getting AI from vendors or from embedding it in your technology, there's some terrific opportunities, but third-party reviews may sometimes be very appropriate. And we'll talk a little bit about what AIs need that kind of third-party assessment. But that's what our company does with a faculty from around the world and subject matter expertise. We are unique in that we are focused on law enforcement. And so I mentioned our work with the federal government, but just to give you a little context, I have been a speaker with Interpol and the UNICRI in Singapore and Lisbon in New York. We've spoken at the IACP, and we've spoken with the CACP board. And so we are really focused on being partners to law enforcement on the use of AI, governing AI, and have learned a lot as we have with the team here at YRP and this previous presentation. But really the topic of applying AI in law enforcement is a very challenging topic, but a very important one. And I appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak with you all and applaud you for including this topic on your busy agenda. There's so many important topics you're looking at. I'm going to go a little bit deeper in my opening presentation. I look forward to questions, but I didn't suggest that this is going to be a technical presentation. That said, I encourage you all to not over concern yourself with not being an AI expert. None of us are. It's a moving target. It's changing all the time. Even the experts are saying we don't understand where it's going. So don't over worry about the technical elements here, but do concern yourself on how it's developed and how it's used. But just briefly, I'll share that this diagram is a simple version of AI, looking at how AI is built. Really, what AI is a prediction machine. It's an ability to look at a large amount of data and iterate with data and look at predictions and identify models and algorithms that can predict the future of how by looking at large amounts of data. So this is a machine learning diagram. There's many different species of AI, but I worked with a lot of boards, and the way I try to summarize it rather than talk technical is that really there's a life cycle in AI that's a little different than other technologies. And so we talk about data collection to train a model. You develop a model, you deploy it, and then it drifts. So this is a dynamic technology that is not a one-time go, no go. Does this technology work? Let's use it. It's a dynamic technology that's built on data and models and applied in very in significant scenarios as well. So when we talk about the governance of AI, we have to talk about governing it all the way through the life cycle. And there really is a large data element as well on the topic of AI. But I wanted to just take it down a level quickly on data, because data comes in a lot of different places when you talk about artificial intelligence. It's really the training of the model. So how is the model trained? If you're utilizing AI, if it's available to you, it was been trained by the original developers. Do we know on what data it was trained? But then when you start deploying it, you talk about using operational data. Your data of criminal activity or your community's data, et cetera, can be applied. And then you need to recognize that post-deployment, the AI can drift. And essentially, when I talk about drift, the models are learning models. These algorithms will continue to learn as new data is provided. So you might get a different answer from ChatGPT next week as you did last week, because it's continuing to learn. So there's model drift, but there's also usage drift. Are we using it the way it was actually developed? And are we using it in other places? Is there policy drift, where there's legislation has changed and now what we thought was acceptable is not acceptable? So there's a lot of different kinds of drift in AI that we need to consider when we talk about guardrails. Stepping back for a moment, this is a slide borrowed from Interpol, and over the last few years, there's a global movement on responsible AI and collaboration around the world. The punchline here is AI may be the ace up our sleeve to ensure the safety and security of our global community. It's a hugely applicable technology to a lot of the pursuits of law enforcement, and we know that criminal activity is utilizing this technology, and so we need to arm ourselves with the capabilities of this technology. There's a number of use cases identified in this Interpol slide that are significant, but I'm not here to suggest that these are the right ones for YRP, but these are topics that have been considered as ways that AI could apply in the significant challenges of law enforcement. You can see some of those here: predicting violence, identifying persons and crowds. But my message here, as we've learned together with the YRP team, is that public trust is so critical. We need to be very careful to have public consultation as we build the frameworks and policies of what AI is effective for our community. And we need to classify the AI and make sure that we have the right guardrails on any applications. So while there is a huge opportunity to leverage the technology for law enforcement, we need to balance it with public trust, as I know as members of this board as well as mayors. It's all about serving our communities, but again, the community is wanting us to be safe. They're also wanting to leverage technology, but of course there are risks that we need to have guardrails on. So what are some of those risks? Again, I'm sure they're in your mind as soon as you heard that we're going to talk about AI. So not only are there risks, but there are headlines of mistakes made by the utilization of AI. So these are a few generic examples, but we'll talk specifically to law enforcement in a moment. But privacy breaches, that data, Was there consent and informed consent in the usage of the data? And there's obviously lots of privacy legislation and requirements, ethical questions about unintended uses of AI, what it was trained for. Cambridge Analytics is an example of election activities in 2016 in the US. Bias in algorithms, huge topic. When we talk about historical data training prediction, well, that historical data may have demographics or information that creates a biased algorithm. And there's many examples of gender bias in predictions of on credit card fraud, etc. So there's many examples in the headlines of issues, explainability, transparency, and governance. And when we got involved with law enforcement, the headline was about facial recognition, Clearview AI, was the technology the issue or was the governance the issue when we deployed facial recognition without necessarily understanding where the data came from and how it was being deployed and in what circumstances? So a good governance will really avoid these headlines and crises. And I again applaud Greg's team, Superintendent Salia, and the work here on getting the committee educated and setting up the right policies. This slide is borrowed from Toronto Police. They're working on this topic, as are many agencies, and they shared that we need to classify AI. And this slide we co-presented with the IACP in the US about recognizing that AI, we don't need to consider it one technology that needs certain guardrails. It really is various flavors of technology. We need to think about the right governance and guardrails for different levels of risk. So there's many different applications of AI in law enforcement, and we don't want to overdo it and say that we were going to come to the board every time we use AI. There's many applications that are safe, appropriate, as long as we follow policy, as long as we have the right level of education. Let's leverage the technology, but there are a number of use cases that need another level of oversight and governance as well. So we're getting into that. The work we've been doing in partnership with YRP has been over the last year, where we've done a custom developed education program for the governance committee here and the organization, with a series of education programs around use cases and what law enforcement's doing and how to build a policy and framework for an organization like YRP. We had a workshop on developing policies, and we're very pleased that there's a draft policy. We haven't had a chance to review, but as partners, we are looking to be third-party reviewers and subject matter experts in your activity here as well. So one of the takeaways, though, I shared earlier, and I shared certainly with our team and the education programs, is that like the adage in many parts of business and organizations, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so we need to make sure that we have the right metrics and measurements on artificial intelligence and its use, and identifying with our communities, our public, our stakeholders, what are the questions, what are the risks, what are the trust elements that people care about, and then let's measure and make sure that we're within the guardrails of what's acceptable to our organization. So measurement is certainly a message from U Energy AI, and I do believe we're on the right track here at YRP for leveraging this technology. So just describing a little bit about the good work that the committee here has been doing, and the leadership of YRP. We have recognized that we at YRP want to triage and classify AI so we have the right governance and guardrails. And what we've identified is that, and this is a simplification of the work, but really there's a spectrum here, a continuum, that from a very low risk to very high risk, there's different levels of guardrails. So low risk, let's make sure there's training. What is AI? How do we use it? What are acceptable uses of AI and policy? And then support it, register our uses, track our uses. That's a good way of oversight. Whereas when you get into the higher risks, let's make sure there's committee oversight with access to subject matter experts. Again, you guys, you folks are experts in such an important area. Having expertise in all parts of AI isn't likely to happen. So having ways to access subject matter experts. And then there's a level of risk where you really could value an independent third-party assessment and making sure that the governance questions of the public get asked, and we look for good data to measure this. And then there's other times, and it should come to the board, and we should have a framework of what is acceptable, because again, there are technologies that can really help focus our attention on the data we saw earlier, but we need to make sure we ask ourselves the question about the technology. Is it biased? Is there privacy issues? Is it explainable? And there are many use cases that you will probably say is not acceptable, and let's make sure we have guardrails to not go there in the use of AI. Public transparency all the way along is something I've heard from Chief McSween, and I applaud and encourage that we do want to make sure that the public's involved, but it's not about the technology. It's really about the uses, the questions, what does trust look like, and how do we measure it to people's satisfaction, so we monitor it and leverage it where it makes sense. So our learnings as New Energy AI working with YRP is that we really do encourage and need a YRP specific policy and framework for governing AI with public consultation. There's a lot of room for collaboration, as we've talked about, Chief McSween, with other agencies. We've talked to the board at CACP, and there's a lot of need, but the leadership is required, and then collaborating, because this is, again, across regions as well. But training is important for the board and important for staff to understand what it is and what isn't, where is it acceptable to use, having a protocol for assessment of certain use cases. Another topic that's come up with the federal government, and I'm sure it's come up with yourselves, is Canadian sovereignty. The AI stack may have dependencies on foreign uses of data and technology that might, in today's geopolitics, have risks as well. So understanding the AI stack is important, and registering the uses, data governance, clarifying the guardrails. Again, I think as fiduciary members of the board, asking good questions, making sure you have guardrails is what I think most communities are expecting. Quickly, I'm going to touch on a few use case examples. New Energy AI has a software platform that tracks and measures categories of AI and questions and metrics over time with a trust score on AI, but it's really important that we measure it over time. So I heard the conversation earlier, those trend lines are really important on AI. But the first use case that we dove into with the law enforcement was around facial recognition. The technology was very effective for Caucasian males. The first flag that went up was a privacy commissioner said the data was not approved. It was Facebook data, training and algorithms without people's consent. But the biases were not understood, because this was a very effective technology on Caucasians, but people of color, it was not that effective. And so people hadn't measured it and applied it without understanding the data and the measurement. So that's a use case that I think has been looked at quite heavily in law enforcement. I heard the conversation about human trafficking and child trafficking, and I applaud the efforts here, but there are AI technologies on the internet for identifying human trafficking and some of those elements. But we looked at some AI, and unfortunately the AI was a black box. We didn't have access to the training data. We didn't know if it had biases and how it was developed. So do we want to apply effective technology for such an important topic? Yes, but not all technology is acceptable. Is it explainable to a judge? How did you make this decision? Oh, the AI told me. We need that human oversight. We need to make sure we augment the intelligence. So human trafficking AI, yes, if we have it with the right guardrails. There are many other use cases I can speak to if there's questions, but we play a third-party role. Hallucinations, huge topic in generative AI that you need to check your data and can it augment you and improve your productivity? Absolutely, but hallucinations are really important. And there are cases in Ontario law of judges seeing data being presented by lawyers that was hallucinations from generative AI. So many use cases we've applied our methods to put guardrails on, and we're delighted that YRP is heading in this direction as well. So I'm ready for Q&A. I do have one last slide and can come back to any of these topics if there's questions, but we do have recommended next steps. I think we're on a good track here with a policy and have third-party review where it makes sense. AI literacy and governance oversight processes, the board, a framework of when it should come to the board and what's acceptable. Again, I wouldn't suggest we over-govern it, but we don't want to under-govern it too. There's many use cases that do need extra eyes and questions before we approve it. Let me pause there. Hopefully this is helpful and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I know members will have some questions. You spoke about AI literacy, and this is we're just touching. I've done a little bit of, I had to keep up my qualifications, so I had to do PDU, so I did it in AI. And the experts out there, they talk about the levels, and some say there's 4, some say there's 10, and then there's the types, the 3, some say 3 set, but we're in the very narrow intelligence right now, the beginning. And they're saying that this is going to be extremely powerful.
Yep. And
that we talked about, you said the previous presentation, it's all about the data, and it's all about somebody validating what AI is telling us is correct, not blindly taking it. Once you've set up a model that works and it's been validated, it will help tremendously, but it's getting to that point.
Right.
So I know Member Purchell wants to ask some questions.
This is the future, obviously. It's an extraordinary series of opportunities, but it's an extraordinary series of threats. And the threats come in the form of both the impact and the speed of this technology. We are not even close to managing its impact, but we're really being overwhelmed by its speed. I do a lot of work in this area in another context other than law enforcement, but certainly increasingly we've been thinking about law enforcement. You left us with an interesting thought, and I'm going to leave you with an interesting thought as well. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. But if you can't understand it, you can't control it. And the real question is, and you're quite right, we're moving from narrow intelligence to general intelligence to super intelligence. How quickly does that come, and what is our capacity to enforce governance or governance or ask any meaningful questions? And the answer is there are no answers to any of that. This is a blundering into a future we do not control. And that is going to be an inordinate challenge and an inordinate opportunity. But I'm inclined to believe, on the basis of a technology review we did last night, we won't be able to control this over time. And that has extraordinary implications for all of us.
I'm happy to comment on these. Comments are very helpful. On the AI literacy, I think we know we need human in the loop. We need to make sure it's augmented its productivity, but yes, it's not going to make decisions for us. We need to make the decisions, and the literacy is really important. But to your point, I have learned, to your point about understand to control. I like your message. The AI is scaling so quickly. AI governance has to scale as well. And so we need to think about how we can scale governance. Our fiduciary responsibility as board members is to ask good questions, and we have a duty of care. And so, we need to accelerate that care elements to the extent we can. And there are ways to get ahead of the curve as much as possible, but it is moving so quickly. And so, again, it's not a choice of, well, maybe we won't do AI for a while. It's there, it's everywhere today. And so engaging is what I would add to your helpful comment.
Member Cartolucci, and before you go, this thing is what, January 9th, 2007 was when it first dawned, and look, everybody now around the world have these, and it's a walking computer. It's no longer a phone.
Yeah, it's listening to us right now.
It is. Member Cartolucci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for making me understand the guard railing. But my question is, AI, what it is? As far as I'm concerned, we have a chief of police here. We have deputies. We have superintendent. We have the total force. That's AI. That's how I see it. When you put information together and it's not controlled and it's run by whoever runs it, it creates a disaster. You're going to manipulate and make everybody else slave of that system, which is, as a human being, I trust my chief of police. God give him the AI that he has between his head and the rest of the people. And we have that here. I agree that they have to communicate. They have to get all these and these what's happening in the world, and they should be in top of their hands. But to have a system that tells them what to do, we're not there. I'm not for that at all, because we have to think as human beings, and we're the one that have to protect this Mother Earth. We have to protect our human race, not push of a button.
So
This is my feeling.
yeah, so that's where this data validation and what comes out. But to give you a quick, so a room, boathouse, took a picture, asked AI, extend the room out 8 feet, put glass at the end. Back comes a picture of the full extension. And then it's submit drawings for planning. And out comes the planning drawings for that. That's the power of AI nowadays. So, and I hear you, and it has to be validated that these are structurally proper engineered drawings and everything, but that's where the data comes from. And so it's not just write a speech or fix my email for me. The power that's behind this, and that's what they're calling the narrow intelligence.
Yes.
But the message is so confused. We're going to have now intelligence taking over human thinking, which we have was given to all of us. Different, but it was given. So I'm afraid that you're going to put tomorrow in the hands of mechanical or computer things that we have to control.
Yeah.
And that is very dangerous.
AI is a tool and it needs oversight, human in the loop. It's really augmenting the productivity. But please, Chief.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to add that comment. The comment here about human in the loop is how we still have to make the decisions. And I think it touches on your point, Mr. Cortellucci, about we can't have and this is where we were talking about some technologies that were used the wrong way in the past, where they were using the technology to point to something and then police were just moving in that direction. Can't do that. That's why the human in the loop piece is really important. We can make the decisions. We use the AI piece as a tool. We can't bury our heads in the sand on AI though. It is happening now faster. I mean, it seems like only about a year or two ago, we were talking about the AI coming about in society, and now look where we are just a couple of years later. And I suspect I'm no expert by any means, but it's going to just continue to get faster and faster, and we have to harness it to help, from our perspective, keep the community safe. And we see lots of opportunities to do that. I think to me, it's about walk before you run in some instances and run when you can in others, right? And there are others where we can run quickly, like on the administrative tasks. There's a lot of things can be done, already being done. But there's others where we definitely need to walk before we run, and the governance around the whole thing is the critical piece, which is the whole message here today. And we're working within that framework.
Member Taylor, and then member Bodenstein, and then
Thanks very much. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say I hope our chief's intelligence isn't artificial. Great presentation, and I think often I've been in a lot of presentations in AI and conferences and presentations, and often we just end up having a discussion, debate about is it really scary or very scary or not scary. But as has been stated, it's here, and it's going to be here more tomorrow and the next day, so we have to take the steps we should responsibly work with, manage it, and leverage it. I'm on the side of I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity. I think it's going to cure diseases. I think it's going to help policing. I can't wait. I've seen some real life examples on basic levels that are already incredibly exciting. But I do think this work is really important to help us. So I just asked if you can flip to slide 13. And I'm sure this was done, but my question sort of from the governance perspective is this piece is a very good piece. I've never seen it put this way. I like it. But what's really important is what's the criteria and who and how do you define very low or high? Because if that's off or inconsistent, it's all meaningless. So I assume you went through some work and with our team also on how that gets done. Right. Have we actually run a few, I assume we're already using AI a little bit in some examples. We run some of them through this. Did we do some hypothetical cases? Are you or somebody else going to work with us on an ongoing basis to look at some of the first examples of what are the many examples over a period of time to ensure that this part is because I think this is the critical part.
Yeah, no, thank you. And others can comment, but yes, we are collaborating on this. In our initial work, we did look at a number of use cases to kind of test the waters on how we would classify. And so the policy is being generated now by your colleagues here. And that framework of how to assess and triage the use cases is something that does need more work, but we are ready to continue to go down that path. But we did look at a handful of use cases and as experiments of where would this be in the classification? And does the committee have the ability to oversee, these use cases or what more do they need to do? But more work is needed on that framework, but there's a great start with the policy draft that I think is developed.
So that policy draft includes what criteria, or is it like 5 questions you ask with a scale of 1 to 5? And is it a committee of 3 or 5 people? And
maybe I can just jump in here. Well, I haven't seen the policy yet, but I know we're within 2 or 3 weeks of having the final draft. If anybody at the back here, Greg probably, Stanisi, I'll introduce Greg from our business intelligence section. Greg, you can maybe comment on that, if you don't mind. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Chair. To answer this question, we have done work with New Energy on taking this framework and applying it to our own organization and the technologies we have been exploring or made aware of through our vendors. So we do see those questions informing how we've moved forward and how to classify our technology. So this is not formalized. It's not official. It's only been done as a proof of concept, I would say. New Energy has helped us review at least 9 different AI types of technology. We're not saying that we've been using these 9 technologies, but we've taken the most common use cases we know of in law enforcement and put them through this type of a framework to determine how would that type of technology come out with respect to what type of AI governance, what type of guardrails, and what level of community engagement, board engagement, ELT engagement would they require. So this is very much still in development, and we are very excited about this opportunity, but it is very complicated. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, and I would say as any comments on any specific technology, we would definitely explore that in private, not here in the public session, but we're going to continue to work with the team and move towards a more robust way of understanding how and when we should and engage, to Greg's point, on whether it's community, whether it's board, whether it's even us, depending on what level of risk we're at. That's all to be determined still, but it's well underway. And I think to Mayor Taylor, to your point, an incredibly exciting opportunity here for the organization and the board to really move this forward, and as fast a pace as we can, being mindful of the impacts depending on what the technology is we're talking about at any given time. So anyways, I'll leave it there, but unless.
Well, I guess what I'd say is, look, it's not the most important or thing about AI, but we're talking about governance of AI. And so to me, it comes down to this.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is we haven't landed yet on how we're going to categorize very low versus high. And I think that's critical. So I think that probably should come back to us at some point. And is it fair to assume you're working with us still until that is completed? And will it be embedded in the policy? It shouldn't be a committee of 3 or 5 people sitting around and saying, okay, what do you think? Is this moderate or low? Well, it could be, because it's got to be pretty nailed down and because the consistency of the measurement is also important. So I'd be very curious about where we go with that, because I think it's at the core of the governance portion of what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. We have established a governance committee with the assistance of New Energy at York Regional Police, and that was something originally started with Deputy Hammond. With that committee, we have representation of every major service area in our organization, so the directors or executive directors of all those areas are part of this committee, representing both SOAR and civilian. All those committee members have been a part of the New Energy training, because as you have all seen, the topic is very complex, and in order to govern, as Niraj pointed out, you must have the proper education. So that's where we've started educating all those governance committee members and informing our process. And we've been doing this throughout 2025 to prepare ourselves and also to protect ourselves and our organization and the community in this work. So we definitely have this in place as far as the governance committee goes, but as we all know, the policies are still to come and still require that level of engagement that I know is going on.
So I guess I'll leave it at this, but I guess what I still don't know, and that's fine, but I hope to know at some point is, will the policy have it in it that goes to the governance committee about how this is specifically adjudicated? Is it a 5-category scale of 5, that the committee discusses and pegs it at, or how is, I don't know enough to know how it should be done, but I think it needs to be very defined. And so I'd be interested in that. The last thing I leave you with is I think this is important and something that might not get thought of, but the committee, I don't know if it's 3 or 5 or 15, but some level of consistency with that committee over time. Because if you have, 6 of 7 leave in 1 year, because some of it is kind of level setting with the group, right? So I think about that too, with the turnover, and that it's gradual maybe or something. But anyway, I hope we can hear more about this at some point.
Mr. Chair, through you, Jason Fraser.
Jason. Mayor Taylor, through you, Mr. Chair. Legal's on one of the various members on the committee, and I have the privilege of being the legal representative on the committee. And to answer that question, working with our IT people and with the other areas of the organization, what the policy will ultimately include is a framework for doing just that. It'll be broader, but modeled in some respects on the privacy impact assessment that we currently do for all of the things that we engage with, where there may be privacy issues. For AI issues, we will develop that same sort of assessment. And I think up to how many questions now on this? There are approximately 60 questions on the current version of that, so that as you go through, and this is information that will be obtained from the vendor, information will be obtained from the specific area that's looking to use whatever technology is, and gathering all that information and running it through these series of questions. And the questions will lead to scoring to make sure that we have the information that we need, and to come up with ultimately a rubric that's going to get us in the appropriate class, but with a process that will be relatively objective. While at the same time having the committee process to make sure that we don't become dogmatic to a score. No, the score is 57.2, and all of a sudden that's that. But to make sure that ultimately we've got a process that's going to be
robust and consistent with a committee that will allow us to continue to, because we got to measure the measurement too, to make sure as we go along that we continue to ask the right and relevant questions.
Okay, well, I'd love to hear more about that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, is a very interesting presentation. And I was just want to make a comment and jump back to the previous conversation with that member Cortellucci, and we were having about the use cases of it. And and in my day job in science, this use of AI is a little bit more mature, and we've been using this sort of technology, whether it be computer-aided design for new drug compounds in the pharmacology field since I started it back in 2012. And the University of Toronto has full centers called the Acceleration Consortium. I'm sure you're familiar, where it's a whole center dedicated to making autonomous labs using AI. So I think my point to all this is just sort of saying is that like this technology may seem new in this context, but it's actually fairly mature in where we are at it, where I've been using it already. And I know from in the medical field, obviously different from implications than the policing field, I know a lot of medical doctors as well that will openly use AI. And I think it goes a lot to your comment that it's already here. People are using it. And I think it's really highlighting that this is inevitable, that we're just sort of developing that tools. And I think it's important, like you said, AI is a tool. It's not a means to sort of direct people, but I think a lot of us already in sort of fields that have embraced it kind of use it as a sort of a jumping off point where we can get from A to Z a little bit quicker, because we could do the same thing and run similar simulations, and mechanical engineers do the same thing, whether it's in CAD software running simulations. AI is just sort of expedited that a little bit, and so I think it's a really important conversation. So I thank you for your presentation and insights. Thank you.
Don't know if there's any questions in there for you. Member Latif Faisal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the question was answered on governance. It was asked by Mayor Taylor. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Sure. I just want to clarify. I'm not saying the information which is already available there. I mean, police, they have to communicate with Metro. Police have to communicate with OPP. The information is there. I don't see as AI, the intelligent something. It's all information available. I don't know what's so intelligent about that. It's put it together and use it to the best ability. I don't see replace that the thinking of people. That's what I'm trying to say. So everybody's aware there's all kinds of technology available. The medical field has gone on with computer, how fast you can do it. But it seems here that this is a magic potion that's going to cure things, but it's not. The thinking has to be done by human beings, by the chiefs of police. All that has to be, but the reports are all there. We just have to absorb them and make sure they communicate with our CMP, with the World Police, with OPP. This is what we're not doing. We're lacking that. That's what we're not doing. So I don't know if it takes something like something intelligent. It's nothing intelligent. They only get information and put it together and make it available. So I get very frustrated in seeing that this is magic. It's there. Let's use it.
So with that, you'll be delighted to move the presentation.
Okay. So as long as we use it.
Seconded by Member Faisal. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks.
That takes us on. There's no deputations. There's two communications before us. One's about the new declaration that no members of the board need right now, and the other is about, as the chief said, some cash penalties. I'll ask member Purchell to move both correspondence, seconded by member Carlucci. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That carries. I'll ask members for consideration and adoption of the reports. The chief would like to speak to 8.3 and 8.5, or sorry, 8.3, 8.5, and 8.6, and 8.10. Are there any others that members? Yes, member Bowden. Sorry, 8.2. Any others? If not, I'm going to ask then that member Taylor and member Bodenstein move recommendations 8.1, 8.4, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9. All in favor? Carries. 8.2, member Bodenstein.
Thank you, through the chair. So I just had a question about this. I asked a similar one back in May as well. And it's just about the breakdown and the distribution of disciplinary actions across officers across the districts. And back in May, it was also mentioned because, and we see a similar pattern here where 5 different districts is a bit of an outlier, where it's 1, 1, 2, 4, 11 between 1 to 5 districts here. And then in May, it was 2, 1, 5, 7, and then 19 through 1 through 5 districts officers as well. So I was just wondering if there's been any insight since that last meeting in May, if why at 5 districts seems to be a bit of an outlier here, and in addition to the sort of type of disciplinary actions where it's this damage to YRP property that sort of stands specifically to 5 district, whereas the other districts are sort of seeing a very similar failure to comply with procedure or trust. So just if you can provide any insight, that'd be great. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. Jason, do you have any insight on this at this point?
Based on these stats, we don't, frankly, through you, Mr. Chair, how we present the stats on these reports isn't necessarily how we use them within professional standards, but the way we deliver them here is prescribed by statute. We do break down by district, but we tend to look at behavioral trends. So sometimes there are issues with people not attending paid duties, for example, or issues with departmental motor vehicle collisions, and those things are tend to be how we deal with it. And I still think we're a little early days to go looking for trends based on the way we're required to report here, because fundamentally, 4 district and 5 districts are just so much bigger than the other districts. And so that's, I think, part of it. And they're the busiest of districts. So they tend to get more. So from time to time, we do identify trends when we look at behaviors, but I'm not prepared to say that there's a specific issue in 5 district per se yet, just based on the data we have. But we're certainly following, certainly aware of it. But I'll say this before we even did these reports, I kind of figured there would be 4 and 5. And just one thing we do look at is we also tend to find that the bigger districts is where the action are, and so our younger officers want to go there. So we do tend to see an experience level with the larger districts, as opposed to the 1 and 3 that are smaller. So we're certainly on top of those things, but I mean, I'm hopeful that the way this is displayed and the way we're required to report is of assistance to the Inspector General as they take a provincial look, because that's who's sort of mandated this breakdown. For us, I just find it's a little too, there's not enough misconduct at such a low level for us to make a lot of use out of these small numbers.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, and I would just counter that and just play devil's advocate to push back. You mentioned that 4 and 5 are, if it was purely related to population size, you would expect a similar number between 4 and 5, but that's not the case. We're seeing in this report 4 to 11. 4 district has 4, 5 districts has 11, and in the May report there was 7 and 4, 19 and 5. So it's something outside of that pure just being a busier district as well. So but yeah, if there's no necessarily conclusion I can be made from it, we'll leave it at that then. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So you'll move those recommendations for 8.2, seconded by member Taylor. All in favor? And Jason, you'll know that the next report this comes, somebody's going to be asking.
I've already made note of that, sir. Thank you.
8.3, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, as you can see, to board members, this is another interim financial report. I'll have our CFO, Jeff Channel, speak to this briefly and give you an update. Jeff?
Thank you, Chief. Good morning to the board through you, Chair. This report is in front of you today in accordance with the quarterly reporting requirements found in the board's financial management board policy number 01/05. At the board's September meeting, you'll recall that the report spoke to year-end deficit projections in a range between $16 to $19 million. The majority of that deficit call related to bargaining outcomes. At that meeting, we provided additional commentary on the YRP generated deficit of approximately $6 million. This was due to overtime and the reclassification of members through the Joint Job Evaluation Committee, these outcomes. Today's report talks about a financial forecast modeling that has been revised, and it shows an increase to the deficit call by about $2 million. It now falls in a range between $19 to $21 million. The primary reasons are all wage-related, Chair. Bargaining impacts are now known, with the payouts to members occurring last month, and they exceed previous estimates by approximately $400,000. Overtime, which is largely driven by investigative projects, is $500,000 ahead of previous projections. And finally, hiring continues to be ahead of plan, which has contributed a $900,000 pressure between full-time, temporary, part-time, and casual hire status. With that, Chief, is the overview of the year-end deficit. Sorry, Chair. And I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Questions? Member Faisal.
Mr. Chair, through you, very simple question. Under the board's budget, there's a revenue of 434,000. My question is, where does the revenue come for the board?
One second, please. I think it's best that I actually get back to Member Faisal with the answer on that. My understanding, Anitra, is that this is seized funds. Yeah. How about we take it offline and I'll get back to you, Member
Thank you.
Any further questions? I'll ask Member Purchell, Member Cartelucci to move and second the report. All in favor? Carries 8-5.
Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Chair, 8.5 is a direct purchase for radio maintenance, support, and optional items. It also, just important to note, it goes hand in hand with the supplemental private report 6.9 in private. And if there's any further comments after our CFO speaks to this item, we can speak to some of it in private if need be. But Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chief. And as an overview of this report, it's in front of you today under sections 10.1A and 10.2 of the board's purchasing bylaw. It requires the board's approval for direct purchases greater than $150,000. At its January 22nd, 2025 meeting, the board approved a direct purchase with Motorola Solutions for a one-time radio system upgrade, which was completed this past May. Today's request addresses a second related contract for support, for standard support, and this is a term of 4 years through 2029, up to 2029. And this sustains service levels and protects the board's mission-critical communications. The support agreement set out service levels in response to priority incidents. Page 3 of the report speaks to various priority types, as well as bundles third-party components. And Motorola's ecosystem includes components from Motorola for microwave backhaul and NICE for voice logging. The 2025 upgrade positions the board to pilot Motorola's latest and newest capabilities, which is listed in Appendix 1. enabling controlled trials without disrupting frontline operations. I'll highlight Smart Connect, which in addition to next generation radios, have the ability to use both radio signals as well as cellular systems, which has the potential to address coverage concerns in highly dense urban areas like the Vaughan Metropolitan Center. The 2026 budget anticipated this maintenance and support agreement and also established capital spend authority. This is multi-year project work. Following the board's September approval, YRP concluded deliberations with Motorola on additional radio system enhancements. We do not expect to fully utilize all of the CSA approved through the 2026 budget. Any unused capital will be deferred for capital replacement of the radio system, which will be in the late 2020s or early 2030s. In summary, this contract aligns with prior approvals, maintaining continuity between the completed 2025 upgrade and the proposed multi-year support needed to safeguard reliability of the public radio system. Before I go, joining me today is James West. James is the Manager, Technical Support Bureau, who's also available to answer any technical questions about the support arrangement. With that, Chair, over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions? For Taylor.
Thanks, Judge. Yeah, so it says in here in an open report, I have to point out that Motorola is the only provider able to deliver the necessary support software and service to maintain the infrastructure, full stop. Like that's kind of an invitation to charge us anything they want. And does that mean that it's the only one because that's what we're kind of locked into? And other jurisdictions sometimes use different systems? And are we planning on and starting to look at what we're going to do or how we're going to create a competitive environment by looking towards having at least the option for a different system? Because this seems like we're locked into a not an ideal situation.
I'll start the conversation. We're at year 10 of what is normally a 15-year life cycle on a radio system. So when we're talking about the only entity capable of providing the support maintenance, it's on the Motorola system with Motorola. That's what we're talking about to get the useful life out of the system. The alternative of going to new radio systems at the 10-year mark is that you're shortening the lifespan and the costs go up.
Okay.
I can say that in 2013, when we did go out, we were one of the jurisdictions that went out to market through a request for proposal process. Some of our neighbors picked a direct purchase route and they received governance approval for that. I would expect we would continue with that practice of going out for a request for proposal. There are alternate radio systems in the market, some of which are more military focused and others of which are more located in other jurisdictions like Asia and Europe. Motorola does not have the business. I hope that I'm clear on that, sir.
Okay, so we're approving the support we need for the final 5 years of a 15-year contract, and we're already working behind the scenes to anticipate making sure we've got a more competitive environment at the end of the 15 years. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Any other questions? Member Taylor, you'll move. Member Bodenstein, you'll second. All in favor?
Fantastic.
That carries. 810, Chief. Oh, sorry, 8-6. Ahead of myself.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, as you can see, this is a scope change for consultant services regarding our helicopter hangar project. Jeff will brief you on that as well. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. This report is in front of you today under Section 12.2 of the board's purchasing bylaw, requiring the board's approval for scope changes greater than 20%. The prime consultant for the architect services for the helicopter hangar was awarded to Parkin Architects through a process in February of 2024. The report highlights a number of reasons for the cost escalation on page 2, but I just wanted to give the board some understanding of what this is. We had a road access issue change. So to the south of the property, we had a neighbor who was allowing road access. They sold their business and that road access changed. That required us to rotate the building, as well as design new road access to the north side of the property, requiring a roadway parking. There are other reasons outlined for the reason for this change, but it's really that roadway access that's the bulk of the costs in front of you today. With that, Chair, back to you.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Member Purchell, Member Cartolucci, you'll move in second. All in favor? 810. It goes with the private 6-7.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's any comments around the technology, we'll speak to it in private through 6.7. But as you can see, a scope change and extension to our digital evidence management and in-car camera contract. I'll let Jeff brief you on this one, but there's some exciting things going on with this company in the next 24 months, 12 to 24 months. Jeff?
Sorry, Chief, was this Deputy McCloskey to start?
Kevin can start this one and then over to you. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Mr. Chair. As the Chief mentioned, this is very exciting. This is an endeavor that started back in January of this year with the support of the Chief to do this research. And before I move on any further, I have to say that we wouldn't even be at this point doing this presentation to you and seeking your approval for this purchase without some help with some real resident experts. In our CFO, Jeff Channel, and our Executive Director of Corporate Security, Alfonso Adamo, and my Executive Officer, Staff Sergeant Tom Colbert, who's really been driving a lot of the research and project work behind this. So this report before you speaks to a scope change beyond 20%, and it relates to existing products that we have through the vendor and extending that contract out in the areas of in-car camera system and digital evidence management system. And it's also looking at ALPR enabling and on our closed circuit camera television systems. And the big impact here is to body-worn camera. This is something that the organization has been sort of watching others on for a number of years, and that's been with some very specific purpose. And we believe we're at the point now where we would like to introduce this because what it really does is provide our members, the public, and the judiciary with some of the best digital evidence that we can possibly provide, ensuring that what our officers are seeing and what they're being confronted with is available for others to witness themselves. And whether that be LECA, the SIU, the courts, or ourselves in our training. This is what our officers have been asking us for, and it's really what the public expects. The net benefits are that, with the enhancement of having body-worn camera available to us, we are looking at being in a position to provide a far more complete quality of evidence that supports the effective and efficient investigations and prosecutions. It also increases our transparency to the public and helps foster trust between ourselves, the community, and our partner agencies. Additionally, it also speaks to the accountability of our own members. This is something that is an excellent tool towards that, along with supporting enhanced training based on the debriefs that we can create through playing back our own video. This is in support of compliance for our procedures and our performance management and supervision, and it really overall supports impartial and fair policing. Our intention, subject to your approval, is to start to roll out body-worn camera in probably late April of 2026, and we would do this on a gradual approach, a staggered approach, starting with some of our support units in the support branch, and then rolling it out one district at a time, with the goal being that we would have full deployment of 972 cameras by the end of December in 2026. And subject to any questions at this point, I'm happy to answer anything you have.
Excellent. Any questions? Member Purcell. Just hit your mic.
Storage time on the camera. That is, how long are you retaining the images?
I'm gonna defer to Al on some of the more technical pieces. Thank you.
Good morning, and through the chair. So the storage is the storage of the video depends on what is actually captured. So it follows the retention rules of the offense. But generally speaking, it could last a year depending on the offense.
as a quick follow on, does this go to an encrypted storage site?
It does. All storage does flow into the digital evidence management system, and then follows the retention rules there.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably I wasn't here for when this conversation started long ago, but it was just quick curious. How is the membership responding to this? And I assume there's training that goes with this and all that kind of stuff.
Maybe I can jump in on this one. Well, the membership doesn't know yet because we wanted to make sure. There's a message going out to our entire membership today about this. Exciting for them because I can tell you, Mayor, the deputies and myself have been going to do parade visits for as long as I've been here as the chief, and our members had been asking for body-worn camera dating back to the 5 years ago. So it's exciting for them. I can also tell you, probably 3-4 years ago, maybe 5, the community was asking for this as well. So this is a good news story for our organization. And I think to Kevin's point, to sum it up, it's going to tell a true story of what our officers and our members are facing. Yeah, exciting time. So we will be sending that out today.
Okay, and then the second question is I wouldn't imagine it would take much thought because I know our membership conducts themselves incredibly professionally, but I assume there's a little bit about training about being thoughtful about the new environment you're operating in.
Yeah, so will be a training package going out to the members as well. That will be part of it. As you can imagine, some of the reasons our members have been asking for it is not only transparency, but to protect themselves, because sometimes there are allegations that are made and sometimes they're not accurate. And while our in-car camera has helped us with some instances, body-worn camera will do a much better job of that, and they will feel better wearing that device, which doesn't take up a lot of room. Yeah, so there's training that goes along with it. No different than we did with in-car camera back then about when to use it, when to turn it on, that kind of thing. And it should significantly help the organization and our members and the community.
If I remember from our training days, the new vests have a spot already ready for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any further questions? I'll ask Member Taylor and Member Rodenstein to move 810. All in favor? That carries. There's no unfinished business. There is upcoming events there. I know the board appreciation luncheon schedule. If you guys could decide what day you're serving food, please let Anitra and Mackenzie know. We have a private agenda with a number of items. The chief doesn't wish to pull any. So before we go into closed session, are there any items on the closed agenda that any member wishes to pull for consideration? So this is the 6-1 through to 6-9. Because if not, I'm going to ask then for a mover and seconder for that. Member Purchell, Member Cartalucci, all in favor? You don't have to go into closed. The next then is the I guess a confirmation bylaw 11/2025. Member Faisal, Member Taylor, all in favor? There is a private meeting, the continuation of the chair's meeting, and it has to do with SOA bargaining. So guys can have a quick break and we'll all come back and I'll ask the SOA